Hi, I'm your host, Nicole, and welcome to Bookish Alchemy, the podcast where we explore the mysteries of the universe through the lens of some of my favorite reads. There's a thread of universal truth woven between the lines of ancient sacred texts and forgotten books, and this podcast is my attempt to trace it all back. What if the stories we've all grown up with weren't meant to be read at their surface level? What if they had a hidden, ternary nature, more like blueprints or initiation manuals, that are encoded with layers of meaning until the initiate is ready? This certainly would have made Brit Lit and history class feel a lot more like magic school. In today's episode, we begin a new series based on a book that has completely reshaped the way I view history, mythology, and the evolution of humanity. It's called The Great Initiates by Édouard Schuré. And it doesn't just tell the story of one teacher or one culture, but rather, it lays out the secret lineage of sages, prophets, and mystics who came to Earth as luminous guides across time. According to Schuré, they didn't just preach their message, they transformed the ages. They appeared when the soul of humanity was ready to evolve. And together, they carried a divine fire, passing it from age to age. In this book, Schuré profiles 8 of these initiates: Rama, Krishna, Hermes, Moses, Orpheus, Pythagoras, Plato, and Jesus, not just as historical figures, but as spiritual archetypes, each one offering a new way of being in relationship to the cosmos. And so for this podcast series, I wanted to dedicate one episode to each figure in order, so that we can weave in the patterns, symbols, and philosophical breadcrumbs that still echo throughout our world today. My journey starting this podcast actually began with the last chapter from this book, with Jesus as the last great initiate. Since then, I've thought of so many additional things that I could have added to that episode, as if I didn't do it enough justice. And ironically, it turns out that Schuré felt the same way about his own account of Jesus. I only read the preface after finishing the book and learned that Schuré also wished he had expanded more on the revelations around the mission of Christ, especially after reading Steiner's account of the mystery of Golgotha. It just felt like synchronicity to feel that same sense of incompleteness, or maybe open-endedness, as the author himself. And now, after seeing this fuller picture laid out across these ancient teachers, I understand why. As this story builds upon itself, each of the initiates add more texture to the others, in the same way that each passed on their knowledge through one long initiation of human consciousness. So, no pressure, but I'll attempt to unpack this in a way that's digestible and does them all justice. Starting from the beginning with the first, Rama, a mystical king from the pre-Vedic forests of India with druidic roots, golden tools, and a mission to bring light to the world. But before we get to his story, we need to go much further back to set the stage. Schuré opens the book with a cosmic cast of characters. So before we meet the initiates, we meet the races of mankind. Now pause with me here, because when he says races, he's not talking about modern racial categories. He's referring to spiritual epochs, vast human lineages that carried distinct qualities, colors, and consciousness. He lays out 4 primary races: the black, the red, the yellow, and the white. And yes, the aspiring alchemist in me couldn't help but notice that these are also the 4 corresponding colors of the classical stages of transformation in alchemy. Coincidence? Or is this just part of the embedded cosmic pattern? Schuré explains that these races did not emerge randomly, but as descendants of varied lands, each one arising from a different continent that surfaced from the sea during vast stretches of time, known as interdiluvian cycles. These were the ages between great resets, periods when the earth reshaped itself as new expressions of life and spiritual consciousness began to emerge. Each continent produced its own ecosystems of flora and fauna, shaping the bodies, temperaments, and energies of the human races that developed there. Hence the variety in color, instinct, and spiritual orientation across the human experience. And I know that some of you will love that the author also hints at a race of giants that predated these modern root races of humanity. You'll find echoes of this divine or fallen, larger-than-life race in nearly every mythos of the Nephilim, Titans, Watchers, and Anunnaki, as if some shared memory of a forgotten pre-human epoch lingers in our collective. Now back to the four races as Schuré outlines them. The rise of Africa marks the origin of the Black Root race, known to the Greeks as the Ethiopians, a lineage deeply attuned to instinct, rhythm, and the living intelligence of nature. They emerged across the equatorial zones, carrying whispers of ancient lost continents we've all heard of like Lemuria and Atlantis. From the now vanished southern lands, submerged by the Great Flood, emerged the Red Root race, symbolic, visionary, and cosmic in their alignment. Their essence lived on through the American Indian nations, whose cultures reflected a harmony with the stars, guided by dreamtime and a reverence for celestial rhythm. The continent of Asia, rich in dynastic memory and sacred geometry, gave rise to the Yellow Race, architects of form, masters of civilization. Their legacy is most prominently preserved in the Chinese, whose philosophies of balance, precision, and cosmic timing turn matter into a language of meaning. And in the north, the last root race came from the forests of Europe. The white root race, the Aryans, emerged as seekers of transcendence, spiritual will, and divine law. They sought to understand the divine through order, reason, and alignment with cosmic law. Their path was one of ascending consciousness, reaching toward the heavens by embodying divine principles in thought, action, and will. Yet Schuré reminds us that no one lineage stands alone, as all are a mixture of these four great races. Together they make up the full spectrum of human consciousness, as if our souls are a tapestry woven from the continent, the cosmos, and the mystery in between. Esoteric authors like Schuré often use the term Aryan to mean spiritually evolutionary, not ethnically superior, though unfortunately that term was later co-opted in horrifying ways by political ideologies. In Schuré's context, the root races are symbolic of consciousness phases, not modern racial classifications. From these four great root races, two dominant soul forces emerged. Now this is an incredibly important point, because it is the nature of these two forces that will lead to a profound awareness of everything within the operations of our world. These two polarized soul forces are the Semitic and the Aryan. Each force contributed to the human experiment in their own way. Each brought a gift, a lens, a layer of development to the soul's long evolution on Earth. One moved inward, the other outward. And through the very nature of their contrast, a powerful friction was born. Scientifically speaking, friction is a source of energy, electricity, a power source, the kind of force that forges evolution. Polarity emerged from this tension, and not as in opposition, but as this dynamic dance between two ends of the same cosmic current. These weren't just cultural differences. They were the foundational soul forces that shaped the architecture of religion, politics, myth, and identity itself. This is the essential blueprint behind every duality we know. The yin and the yang, light and shadow, order, chaos, father, mother, matter, and spirit. One pole cannot exist without the other, and it's in their interplay that creates and expands consciousness. This is the great spiritual tension that has fueled the awakening of the world soul for over a millennia. Talk about a tale as old as time. Schuré describes the Semitic and Aryan groups as people and as spiritual blueprints, two radically different paths and ways of relating to the divine. Schuré introduces a provocative insight. I'll quote from the book. Wherever the white colonists yielded to the root race of black peoples, accepting their rule and receiving religious initiation from their priests, their Semitic peoples, such as the pre-Menes Egyptians, the Arabs, the Phoenicians, Chaldeans, and Jews, probably came into being. Whereas in contrast, The Aryan civilizations were likely formed where the white people ruled the black people as a result of war or conquest, as in the case of the Iranians, Hindus, Greeks, and Etruscans, and later identified tribal, nomads, and early Germans. The book provides a bit more context, but if you really want to dive into these origins of antiquity, I highly suggest looking to Rudolf Steiner's account of the root races of humanity. He will single-handedly shake your view of all the cosmos, the 7 classical planets, and the Elohim, or as Steiner will elaborate, the 7 spirits of form. But the important aspect of where this all comes together is when Schuré has this eureka moment. The only reason for the diversity between these two simply stems from the difference of their origins and temperaments. Their origin. Where they came from is the only reason there was any spiritual difference between them. Where they started on the pole. The genius of the Semitic soul is inward, devotional, and seeks revelation from a hidden, unknowable God, a sacred law passed down through prophets and priests. Think, Moses, the Torah, and divine obedience. And the genius of the Aryan soul is outward, expressive, radiant. It seeks divinity through harmony with nature and the stars, through conquest, civilization, and the elevation of the human will. Think, the Vedas, the Druids, and the Stoics. One reaches in, one reaches out. When you think about it, even the direction of their writing represents this polarity, as Semites wrote right to left as inward to source, and Aryans wrote left to right, expressing outward into manifestation. A mirror of this spiritual orientation. And both these intertwining forces coexist within us too, as they coexist and reflect on the exterior throughout religion, politics, and myth. One side wants to follow the rules, as the other side wants to become the rule. And right at the point where this tension first ignites, stands Rama, our first initiate. Rama is the first recorded great initiate of the Aryan cycle, the one who brings structure, fire, and cosmological awareness to a people stepping out of tribal mystery and into spiritual law. According to Schuré, Rama was a solar initiate that descended from Druidic mystics in the ancient north, bearing a holy fire. The same primordial flame we see echoed in Prometheus, in the phoenix, in every tale where the light is carried through darkness. Rama as the first light bringer, and the initiate who lit the path for all who would follow. As a hero of a new age held the sacred fire along with divine knowledge and tools, including the golden sickle, a symbol of his deep attunement with nature's cycles and medicines. Rama was a healer, a mystic, a ruler who led his people out of obscurity by teaching them the sacred science of the land. He showed them how to live in rhythm with the sun, the moon, and the turning of the earth. Think of the moon cycle as the sky's clock, its visible phases marking time. But lunar rhythm is more subtle. It's the inner pulse, the way life, energy, and emotion respond to that cycle. The body feels it. The psyche moves with it. It's a kind of divine biometric, a cosmic feedback loop that reveals how alive everything truly is. If the universe is a great system, then lunar rhythm is the diagnostic scan, tracking the subtle shifts in movement, tension, and growth. A living signal that something is stirring, a pulse. Something is alive. And here's where it gets even more symbolic. Rama, the ram, astrologically represents the sign of Aries, which rules the head, the will, and spiritual initiation. In his myth, he defeats the bull, Taurus, which rules the cerebellum, sensuality, and earthly attachment. This isn't just a myth. It's an allegory for the triumph of higher mind over lower nature, spirit over matter. And in the bigger cosmic picture, this is the literal marking of this zodiacal shift from the age of Taurus to Aries, the bull to the ram, signaling the rise of the spiritual warrior, a new cycle in human consciousness, and in the soul's evolution. It also gives new meaning to that moment in Exodus, when Moses descends from Sinai and finds the Israelites worshiping the golden calf. Maybe the calf wasn't just an idol, but a symbol of the previous age and the resistance to move into a new state of consciousness. And yes, I'm also thinking about how RAM, as in random access memory, stores our short-term instructions and data, and wondering if that's a coincidence or cosmic humor. And this metaphor has carried some weight through the ages, like the story of Moses and Aaron when they stood before the Pharaoh. Aaron throws down his staff and it becomes a serpent. Pharaoh's magicians do the same, but then Aaron's staff swallows theirs. Aside from a supernatural party trick, this is the archetypal battle between these two polarizing forces of dualities that we've been unpacking with Rama. Semitic versus Aryan, inward versus outward, law versus will, magic versus mystery, ego versus soul. Aaron's serpent doesn't just win, it swallows the others. The ego might have us believe this story is about dominance, but from this balanced duality, it's not just dominance, it's the absorption, transcendence, alchemy. It isn't about destroying the other path, it's about consuming and integrating the lower into the higher. The common theme here is that the lower nature isn't discarded, it's transformed. The ego isn't killed and it's tamed. The rival path isn't erased, it's devoured into something higher. And just to clarify that this duel wasn't between Moses and Aaron. Moses was the prophet, the divine seer. Aaron was his voice, the one who enacted divine will on earth. Moses receives, Aaron delivers. In tandem, they too represent this higher and lower mind, or perhaps spirit and soul, acting in unity, one channeling the divine, the other manifesting it into form. But back to Rama, because he is the initiate that planted this seed for us. His battles, like his war with the demon king Ravana, are mythic dramas layered with this symbolic power. Ravana isn't just a villain, he's a 10-headed being, each head representing a different aspect of ego, attachment, or lower desire, pride, anger, lust, envy, greed, and so on. He's a hyper-intelligent being, a scholar and devotee, but corrupted by his hunger for domination and control. He kidnaps Rama's beloved Sita, symbolizing the soul or the divine feminine. And in doing so, he initiates a confrontation with cosmic consequences. Rama's battle with Ravana isn't just a rescue mission, it's the spiritual battle between the higher self and the fractured ego. The initiator is confronting their shadow, not to destroy it in hatred, but to reestablish divine harmony. Every enchanted arrow, every step of the war, becomes a metaphor for this inner mastery. By defeating Ravana, Rama isn't just restoring order to the world, he's reclaiming the soul from illusion. So flying chariots and enchanted weapons aside, the boiled-down point of Rama's quest was simply to raise the consciousness of his people from the lower to higher mind, to unite heaven and earth. It's a reminder that higher consciousness isn't reserved for monks on mountaintops. It's something that can and must be lived in the world through action, presence, and leadership with divine intelligence. Rama was the first bringer of this light, this primordial flame that was passed into Krishna, into Hermes, and eventually into Christ. And now it's our turn to shine and carry our light forward to color the world from our perspective of personal experiences, choices, and alchemical flavor. In the next episode, part 2, we'll explore the luminous life of Krishna and how divine love began to replace sacred law as the path to union. But for now, I leave you with this. What part of you is still ruled by the bull? And how might it look like to let the ram rise? Thank you for tuning in to Bookish Alchemy. If this episode lit a spark, please follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone whose soul is on fire. Your words are the most powerful form of magic. Until next time, stay curious. Brought to you by Curious Mind Studios.